Good morning. So, today we are going to talk about mistakes, and I am going to share with you the biggest mistake that I've made, at least per my definition. There's probably a few more in there somewhere, but at the very least, this is the biggest one that I believe that I made when running my own startup. So, for a little while now, I've been running a fairly successful startup with a few guys. It started back in the university for me. I was basically headhunted in school, and they reached out and asked if I was interested in joining their team and, start working on this product from basically nothing and take it into production and make it something useful to all the nice people of Gothenburg. Anywho, the basic idea was that we would be a three-man team and we would, part-time work on this product, release it, and then see if it had any type of value and maybe turn it into a successful business of some sort. Now it's a few years later, and it's only in very recent time where we've reached a point where we can soon release the product to the general public, and this is kind of me talking to you about the stuff that I learned while doing this. So the fundamental thing that has taken so much time, and the reason why it's been a few years even before we could release something that is actually providing some type of value to people, is basically the reason why I'm making this video. So the problem has been, in my opinion, that we started thinking about how to build a system, or rather the end goal, before the most important thing. Think of it as writing a book. Now, in basically being a writer one-on-one, the first thing you learn, at least we did in school, is that you should think about the ending before you start the book, because that way you know where you're heading. And we did the very same thing very much. We started thinking about, okay, the system we're going to want to build is fairly large scale. It's going to have these requirements, and it's going to have to do all of these different things. Now, this is, probably a lot of this hassle would have gone away if I had been working on that project today with the knowledge I have today, and that's always the case. More afterwards, right? These mistakes would not have been repeated. However, because we started thinking about at least, how the system would work at large scale, we started designing the system as, it sounds absolutely horrible when I say it. I'm almost embarrassed for myself to tell you this, but we started designing the system as if it was a large scale system with millions of users. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that those systems take years. It takes years to build something that is of that scale. Now, we didn't start off at building something that was that massive, but that was the mindset. So all of a sudden, the system, instead of making it provide value, like the smallest possible thing that we could build, so that we could verify that the idea had some type of validity, or like having it that it had value to some type of user, right? We started building all of these things without ever actually testing it with users. We weren't like building things that were value producing for the users. Rather we were building all these things that we thought we needed, and absolutely made sense if you had a business that was at the scale of Instagram or Google, or like something of that size, right? And so that's the biggest tip I can give anyone who wants to start building their own business as a programmer, or like who has a programmer on their team. If you're a programmer, or if you are a programmer yourself, if anybody on your team is trying to build you something, rather when you're trying to build something, build the smallest thing possible to start off with and get it into the hands of the users. Cut corners, like build something. Or we use Firebase now, for example. It used to be that the first system was all built in Java, monolithic application, and then of course Docker comes along with the microservices, and all of a sudden it's all about microservices. We rewrote the whole thing with microservices. And then I realized, of course, stupid little me, that, there's actually a lot of overhead work in order to run things in Docker, especially for an application that isn't all that massive, at least not to start off with. And so it became Firebase, which, basically a year's worth of work could be reduced down to just a few weeks or months. So that's my tip to you. If you are starting off a business, especially if your engineers are talking about, in the future we're going to need this, if you start a sentence with, in the future it will be nice to have blah, when you're building your application, stop that person or stop yourself, because it's not a natural way of evolving your application. It's the same principle as, if you build a road, you start off by looking at the current use case. How many cars is it going to have to support? How many people are going to use it? And you build it for that purpose. And then, if the road actually requires an upgrade, it's the same for everything. Don't build it as a massive highway if it's just this little road through a small town. You have to let it naturally evolve to a point where the requirements for something that massive presents itself. Otherwise, you're going to end up building something that is extremely complex or extremely large, without actually providing a value that stands in relation to the amount of time you invested. So that's my tip. Start off small. Doesn't matter what your system is going to look like 2 years or 3 years or 10 years from now. Build the thing that is required to produce something of value to your users right now. Even if it's not the perfect thing, and even if you think in the future you're going to have to change it, that's okay, because it's easier and faster to build something small now and change it later than trying to build something really massive from the start.